Okay, on the issue of traditional medicine, I'll say it's something I'm very much interested in because if you see my middle name or my maiden name is my middle name is Ajehegbe. That's another story. But my maiden name is Obo. Obo in Ishan is medicine person. Any person that is a traditional skilled at a traditional medicine is known as Obo. That's who you go to for your. In those days, they had two functions. They had the function of administering herbal medicine or medicine, and also they had the function of like a psychiatrist, being a psychiatrist. But luckily, I'll say, which I'm very proud of, on my mother's side, OVMA was also a very, 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 very strong and very, very well versed traditional healer. So I had traditional healer on both sides. My grandfather on my father's side and my grandfather on my mother's side. One thing I'll say about traditional medicine, as with a lot of things that have been misconstrued a bit, is that the origin, as we know, of even pharmacology in the West and medicine itself in the West that have been divided up, and psychiatry in the West is from the same source as our traditional healers. If they look back in history, the traditional healing now, most in those days, traditional healers had other jobs. They were not naturally, some of them are not naturally 100% dedicated that this is what I do every day for a living. Like my grandfather now was a very good farmer. The other grandfather was a sculptor and also very good with carpentry work that he did with the colonial masters. But he was excellent also at certain type of medicines, of administering different cures. But from what I had on my grandfather's side, on my mother's grandfather, his name is Ovieni, was the fact that he came out as a sickling himself. He was the last of a line, and they had no other children. And the reason even he was called Ovieni, the Ovieni means this small thing, was that his mother had, let's say, from my mom's recollection, maybe about, let's say, example, 7 children, big children. After 3 months ceremony, they died. So after the village had gone through that 7 times, then they had this small thing. They said he was so small, they thought he was a dead person. They then said, we've been coming for the giants, now you bring this small thing. Well, we named this one this small thing. And that was his name. Because that's actually how we name sometimes. Names are sometimes also from events that have happened or events that the family also wish. Like my name, Ajehegbe, is from something that had happened to my grandfather or my paternal grandfather, which somebody might have hurt him. We couldn't find out before he died. And they now called Ajehegbe, which means we laugh or we smile and we deceive ourselves. Be careful of such. And if I'll just quickly go back there, if I go back to traditional medicine, was Ajehegbe came from the fact that my mom said, my grandfather wrote, your wife is going to be pregnant to his son. My father was based in Lagos, my grandfather in the village maybe 5 hours away. She's going to have a girl. The girl should be called Ajehegbe, which is myself. But one thing is that you will not be able to see me again. I'm dying. And I'm using this letter to tell you goodbye. My father then did everything he could to get money in those days. He couldn't raise a transport to go and see his father, to find out who had hurt you. Why are you calling this child Ajehegbe? What's going on? But that was my father's greatest regret, that he could not raise. He begged everybody, tried everything. He was struggling. He was in school then trying to read accountancy. He wasn't actually trained by his grandfather because in those days, royalty didn't go to school. The royalty rebelled against the Western infiltration and they refused their children to partake in education, of Western education. So if you have an education, it's what they know they'll pass down. So my father rebelled against his dad that he wanted also the Western education apart from this one, and his grandfather refused. So my father had to do odd jobs to train himself to become an accountant. So he was still training himself to be an accountant and all this stuff, that when his father died. So he couldn't go home to see his father to ask him.